A summary of No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Robert Glover. Dr. Robert Glover's book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, is an insightful guide for men who identify as nice guys. Men who try to avoid conflict, please everyone around them, and suppress their own needs in the hopes of gaining approval, love, and happiness. Unfortunately, these efforts often lead to frustration, resentment, and dissatisfaction in both personal and professional lives. Glover offers a structured approach to breaking free from these patterns, helping men reclaim their personal power, communicate effectively, and live more fulfilling lives. In this video, we'll provide a detailed explanation of each chapter of the book. Chapter 1. The Nice Guy Syndrome. In the first chapter, Glover introduces the concept of nice guy syndrome. He describes nice guys as men who believe that if they act nice, they will get everything they want: love, approval, and a trouble-free life. These men often avoid conflicts, hide their real feelings, and try to meet everyone else's needs instead of their own. The problem, Glover explains, is that this behavior rarely works out. Nice guys often find themselves feeling taken advantage of, unappreciated, and unhappy. Glover stresses that the nice guy mentality leads to resentment because their efforts to be good don't give them the results they expect. Rather than being loved or appreciated, they end up feeling ignored and trapped. Glover highlights how nice guys suppress negative emotions like anger and disappointment, hoping to maintain harmony. However, this avoidance of confrontation and their habit of always giving without receiving eventually leads to an emotional buildup, making these men feel unsatisfied and even emotionally exhausted. Chapter 2. The Making of a Nice Guy. This chapter delves into how men become nice guys. According to Glover, many nice guys develop their habits in childhood. Perhaps they grew up in environments where they were told they weren't good enough as they were. For instance, they may have experienced emotional neglect or criticism from their parents or caregivers. As a result, they learned to hide their true selves, believing that if they were perfect or good all the time, they would be loved. Over time, these men internalized the idea that their worth was dependent on how well they could please others and avoid conflict. Glover explores how parental dynamics, like overly critical or emotionally unavailable fathers and overprotective mothers, contribute to the creation of nice guys. He explains that these men, as children, felt they had to earn love by meeting expectations and avoiding mistakes. The fear of rejection made them develop a pleaser personality. As adults, they carry these childhood patterns into their personal and professional relationships. Chapter 3. Learn to Please Yourself. 1. In Chapter 3, Glover shifts the focus from pleasing others to self-pleasure. He explains that nice guys often put their happiness in the hands of others. This chapter encourages men to stop relying on external validation and start focusing on their own happiness. Glover emphasizes that it's not selfish to take care of your own needs. Rather, it's a necessary part of being healthy and confident. Men should find activities and interests that bring them joy, independent of what others think. The chapter further teaches that many nice guys feel guilty or ashamed for doing things just for themselves. Glover argues that this mindset must change. Men need to stop seeing self-care as selfish and instead view it as an essential part of life. By learning to prioritize their own needs and desires, they become more confident, assertive, and self-sufficient. Chapter 4. Make your needs a priority. Building on the previous chapter, Glover explains in Chapter 4 that making your needs a priority is critical for a balanced life. Nice guys often feel like they are selfish when they ask for something or express a need. This chapter emphasizes that asking for what you want isn't selfish. It's essential for a healthy life. Glover encourages men to identify their needs and to express them directly and clearly. He also stresses the importance of setting boundaries so that others cannot take advantage of their kindness. Glover emphasizes the idea that nice guys need to learn to be comfortable with discomfort. Asking for what you need might feel awkward at first, but it's necessary for building strong, respectful relationships. He also highlights that when men make their needs clear, they are less likely to feel resentment or frustration because they are taking steps to ensure their own happiness. Chapter 5. Reclaim your personal power. In this chapter, Glover discusses the concept of personal power. Nice guys often feel powerless because they spend so much time trying to control how others feel about them. They try to be everything to everyone, but in doing so, they lose sight of their own desires. Glover explains that true power comes from within and that men need to focus on their own actions, not on trying to control others. By reclaiming their personal power, men can start living for themselves rather than constantly seeking approval. Glover makes it clear that reclaiming personal power is not about dominating others, but about taking responsibility for one's own life. He urges men to stop trying to manage or manipulate others' emotions and reactions. Instead, they should focus on what they can control: their own behavior, decisions, and emotional responses. Chapter 6. Reclaim your masculinity. In this chapter, Glover tackles the idea of masculinity. Many nice guys have distanced themselves from traditional masculine traits because they associate them with aggression or dominance. However, Glover argues that masculinity is not about being too tough or controlling, but rather about embracing strength, assertiveness, and leadership in a positive way. He encourages men to reclaim their masculine energy by being bold, confident, and courageous, while also being respectful and compassionate. Glover encourages men to redefine masculinity in their own terms. Instead of shying away from traits like assertiveness, he teaches them to use these characteristics to build healthier relationships, both with themselves and others. Masculinity, according to Glover, involves leading with integrity and being comfortable with expressing both strength and vulnerability. Chapter 7. Get the love you want. Success strategies for intimate relationships. Relationships are often a challenge for nice guys because they avoid conflict and hide their true feelings to keep the peace. In this chapter, Glover teaches men how to communicate honestly and openly in their intimate relationships. He explains that real love comes from being authentic, not from trying to please your partner all the time. By being more direct and open, men can build stronger, more genuine connections with their partners. Glover discusses how nice guys often fear rejection, so they avoid difficult conversations, which only harms their relationships in the long run. He teaches men how to express their needs and feelings without fear of conflict, thus creating a space for true emotional intimacy to flourish. Chapter 8. Get the sex you want. Success strategies for satisfying sex. Sex is another area where nice guys tend to struggle. They often believe that if they are nice enough, their partner will reward them with sex. However, Glover argues that sexual fulfillment comes from open communication and confidence, not from being overly accommodating. He teaches men to take charge of their own desires and to talk openly with their partners about what they want sexually. This chapter challenges the idea that sex is a reward for good behavior. Glover emphasizes that a healthy sexual relationship is based on mutual satisfaction, and both partners should feel comfortable expressing their needs. He also advises men to take responsibility for their own sexual pleasure and confidence. Chapter 9. Get the life you want. Discover your passion and potential. The final chapter focuses on helping men discover their true potential. Nice guys often spend their lives living for others, trying to be what they think people want them to be. In this chapter, Glover encourages men to find their own passions and pursue the things that make them feel fulfilled. Whether it's in their career, hobbies, or relationships, men should stop living for others and start living for themselves. Glover helps men to identify their own goals and passions, encouraging them to stop focusing on external validation and start asking, "What do I want from life?" He provides 3 practical steps for how men can pursue their dreams and make changes that lead to a more fulfilling and authentic life. What is the main takeaway from this book? No More Mr. Nice Guy is a transformative guide for men who feel trapped by the need to constantly please others. Dr. Glover offers a path to self-discovery, teaching men to reclaim their personal power, express their true needs, and build healthier, more fulfilling relationships. The book empowers men to stop living as nice guys and start living authentic, passionate lives driven by their own desires and needs.